Hello, welcome to Sunday Night Prime. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, a member of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and it's my pleasure to be your host for this program, which I know you will find to be very, very interesting. But before we get into that, let me remind you, if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions for programs, please send your emails to sundaynightprime@ewtn.com. That's sundaynightprime@ewtn.com. Well, I greet you with the greeting of St. Francis. May the Lord give you his peace. Tonight's program touches on a very, very important topic, a very important area of the Church's life today, and that is the faith of our young people, especially young people going off to college. And we know that many of them experience tremendous struggles with their faith, and they need a lot of help. And God is raising up wonderful experiences, groups to help our young people. And tonight we're going to talk about one of them in a very special way. Our program is entitled Catholic Faith Alive on Campus. Doesn't that sound good? Catholic Faith Alive on Campus. And to help us, we have members of a movement that the Lord is raising up called St. Paul's Outreach. And I'd like to introduce two of our guests right now. We're going to get a couple more later in the program. But the first one here, this is Ed Moccia. Okay, Ed, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Father. We're excited to be here.
And we have Michela Brooks. Michela, welcome
Father.
to the
Thank you for
program,
having us.
okay? The first thing would be nice was you could just share briefly a little of your background, and then they'll know who you are.
Sure. So my name is Ed Moccia. I've been working with St. Paul's Outreach here in New Jersey for 7 years. I'm married. I've got 5 children. So I'm very excited to be here right now because it's nice and peaceful here. So
Wonderful. Well, we're very excited and happy to have you, Ed.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'm Michela Brooks from Las Vegas, Nevada. I went to school at Benedictine College, and this is my 3rd year serving as a missionary at Seton Hall University in New Jersey.
Oh, very, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I mentioned beginning of the show, the crises, the challenge of our young people. Maybe, Ed, could you say something about what happens to a lot of them,
Sure. I mean, there's all different statistics out there. It boils down to, though, most young people walking away from their faith during their young adult college years. One statistic says only 10% of Catholic millennials attend Sunday Mass. Only 10% of Catholic millennials are attending Mass on a weekly basis. Up to 67% of them will walk away from their faith during their college years. So we're losing a huge number of young people as they enter this time in their life where they're making decisions that are going to impact the rest of their lives. So we always hope and pray, of course, that they'll come back, but it's hard. They're making decisions that are going to impact the way they're going to live the rest of their life.
That's right. And some of them make the wrong decisions. They won't be back, unless they meet someone who can help them get back onto the right track, So it's very important, isn't it? It's really a crisis level to realize that so many people raised in the faith don't continue to practice it,
That's right, including even those, they talk about double dippers. A double dipper is someone who in high school went to Mass on Sunday and was part of youth group. So they were doing 2 things there as a double dipper. Even most of them will walk away from their faith during college. So it's not enough just to have been raised in the faith well. There has to be something more during their college years to support them during their faith.
Yeah, that's very, very important, Would you have anything to add from your experience, Michela, regarding the difficulties that are so present and prevalent in many of our places of higher education?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I've noticed that college students come in to college as freshmen and they're looking for a place to belong. And there are so many groups that are begging for their attention and begging for their membership, but groups that aren't actually promoting their good, the students' good. So I think it's really easy for students to come into college and find a community and find belonging in a group that isn't promoting their own good and their own, their own good. So I think that's like part of our crisis, is that we're not going out, being the first ones to welcome them into a group, into a community, and a belonging to a church, really.
That's very important. You got to catch them before they become entrenched somewhere else, and that's so very important, well, what are the factors? I know they go through a lot of different factors that contribute to this. Maybe you could give us some understanding of some of these factors.
Sure, there's a lot of factors. One of them we talk about is just radical individualism, that for a young person growing up today, life revolves around them, and everything is about, what do I get out of this? So their whole worldview is just centered on themselves and nothing greater than themselves. And when you're thinking that way and living that way, faith, which asks you to give your life away, doesn't have a place anymore. And it's difficult to even speak about any kind of faith matters, because they're just thinking about themselves and what's in it for them.
They used to say, my best friends are me, myself, and I.
That's right. That's right.
And you're right, that individualism, it's just so prevalent. I have a right to this, and that's the kind of thinking you get so often today.
Yep.
Yeah. And how about any other areas of that you see as contributing factors?
Well, we were talking earlier just about how our culture too of instant gratification, like there are so many things that can instantly entertain or instantly grab your attention, that faith is something that takes time. Prayer takes time and commitment, and there's not maybe that instant gratification that our technology gives to us right away, or friendships give to us, or a party would give to you in college. But I think that has a lot to do with changing that culture of instant gratification and having a commitment to something that you might not see the fruit of right away, but you'll feel the grace of it in God's timing. So
that's right. Gotta hang in there. Something to get us beyond ourselves, isn't that? Huh?
Exactly.
That's right.
I know they often talk about the breaking down of family.
Yes.
As a major factor that leads to these things, the individualism, and if the person has not received the love, guidance, care from their parents, even if you got scolded, it's a sign that your parents care about you. They want
Sure, that's a huge one, the breakdown of family, and then entering into college with just these broken relationships and not knowing really how to relate to one another, but looking for affirmation, because everyone, including young people, want to be accepted and want to be affirmed and want to be loved. They want to belong, and so they're going to look for it in other places if they're not finding it where they need to be finding it, and then that's how they get into a lot of trouble. And that's why we talk a lot about, a big part of what we want to do is not just run events, but we want to build a community so that a young person can belong and not just come to something, but come to someone.
Good. Yeah, I think that's, there's an old saying in the spiritual life, grace builds on nature.
Yes.
And in other words, for God's grace to work in us, God's grace can do anything. He doesn't have to, he makes up his own rules of whatever he wants to do. However, that grace builds on nature, you have to have a kind of natural support, a natural development of who you are as a person. Yeah. And that comes from being loved. That comes from being accepted. And, it's through love in the family that we hope the beginning of a sense of you are important, you are loved, and and we want to help you to grow to be the best person you can be, not only for this world but for the next, for heaven.
And I was going to say, and that your value is in who you are, not in what you do, not in what you contribute. For young people, they're looking at maybe their grades, and they're thinking, I'm defined by my grades, or by my athletic ability, or by my internship, or they're just looking at their career, and that their goal is to get good grades, to get that internship so that they can get that good job, and then they're defined by how much money they make, instead of being defined by who they are as an awesome son or daughter of God that's beloved and loved, not for what they can do, but simply for who they are.
That's very important, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, very good point. All these points are so important, and you know that when a person is lonely, you know, you know, there are people who are evil, who want to take advantage of people they feel they're fragile, they're lonely, and they draw them in, and into many wrong things too, you know.
That's right.
And so having a Christian sense of, you know, we're brothers and sisters in Christ, and you make them feel that. Maybe the first time in their life that somebody ever told them
That's right.
that they were loved, and, you know, and I think that's very important. You know, Father Benedict Rochelle, who's really started this program, and he used to work at a children's village, and he always had the principle that if a kid did something good, because they were from broken homes, they were sometimes, you know, kids that needed a lot of guidance, and he used to say, he would always praise them, or give them some candy or something like that. And they felt like, some people criticized him and said, well, you're trying to buy their friendship. He said, no, I want them to know that the good they do is recognized. And that's important, you know, just even to say thank you to somebody. Maybe the first time in their life somebody ever said thank you to them.
That's right. In a real human way. We speak about technology as well, the incredible rise of technology where I can be so virtually connected but not have real human interaction and not have real human relationships. So I'm feeling for my cell phone right now. I don't have it on me. I feel like I need to, but that's the world we live in. So
so very, very important. That's why anything you can do to be helping them, you know. Could you tell us, we have a couple of more minutes in this first part of our program, tell us a little bit about the history of St. Paul's outreach. How did that?
Sure. So St. Paul's outreach started when our founder, Gordy D. Murray, living in Minneapolis, St. Paul at the time, when he was a college student, he had left his faith and was on his way to becoming a statistic like so many others. And it was his friend who invited him to church one day. And it was through the friendship that he had with this person, with his friend putting his arm around him saying, hey, why don't you come with me? I'm going to Mass. And it was in the context of that relationship that Gordy began to experience conversion, began to experience his faith coming alive. And in Gordy also realizing that part of his faith coming alive experience was not just with his one friend, but it was in the context of a community. And then as his faith became more alive, he started telling his other friends what was happening. And then eventually the bishop asked him to start an organization that could help do that for other college students as well. So for the first 20 years, again, this was 30 years ago, Gordy was working in Minneapolis, St. Paul, mainly at University St. Thomas, and then it spread to some other local colleges there within the Twin Cities. But then other people started saying, hey, what are you doing? We would like help evangelizing our friends where we are in different states. And so then Gordy said, come and see what we're doing, come and experience it. And thus was born what we now call the School of the New Evangelization. I think that was back in 2004, was the very first School of the New Evangelization, when myself and about 20 of my friends flew out to Minnesota just to simply learn what he was doing, what St. Paul's Outreach was doing, to try to take it back to our local campuses. And then one of my friends began it at Ohio State University, and then since then it's grown to New Jersey and Kansas and Florida, and now it's in 8 different states. But it really began as a local reality, and then some of us wanting to bring it where we are.
It's mushrooming, right?
That's
Maybe
right.
Hopefully with this program, a lot of other people are going to find out about it, and they're going to say, I want to get into this too. I mean, you know, this is a good thing. It's a good thing. We don't want to keep good things as secrets in the church.
That's right. We want to serve the church.
We want to broadcast what God is doing and calling young people to. Well, you know, we're going to have to take a break now, okay? Don't go away. We'll be right back. We've got so much more to tell you about, and wonderful things that this St. Paul's Outreach is doing and touching a lot of lives. Welcome back to Sunday Night Praying. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, your host for this program, which is entitled Catholic Faith Alive on Campus. Isn't that a great thing to hear? And we have two wonderful guests who have been sharing with us so far, and that is we have Ed Moccia and Michela Brooks. Okay, so Ed and Michela, we thank you for what you've shared, and we'll continue now to share. I think we wanted to get into how the ministry sort of is working. What are the you might call them the pillars of that ministry?
Sure. Well, one is we talk about our ministry needs to be personal. It needs to be relational. We spoke about the breakdown of family and relationships. And so our ministry, we want to be relational. That formation, we realize, isn't just informational, but it's relational. It's not just about what I know, it's about who I know. So we talk a lot about building community and building relationships. It's got to be personal. It has to be based on relationships. But it's not just a me and one other person. It really also is a community. We read in the Acts of the Apostles, whenever someone became a Christian, when they became a believer, a disciple, a follower of Christ, it always says, and many were added to their number. They always joined a community. It's never just me and Jesus, but it's me and Jesus and the community as well.
And you know, it's such a wonderful thing to have a community. I know as a Franciscan, I live in community, you know, and I love my brothers, and sometimes we have to be patient with one another. You know, it's not always easy, but that's part of life. That's, you know, we help to get each other to heaven. They used to say, you know, what God does is he takes two stones that are hard, and he rubs one against the other, you know, until it brings the perfection out of each one of them.
We call it sandpaper ministry.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, you know, see that, as we said at the very top of the show, that the loneliness, the lack of in many instances, of real close family love and care, that leaves an enormous empty spot in the heart of young people, and so they're searching, you know.
That's right.
So that person now, do you go around the campus trying to look for young people who might be interested, or do most of them come to you if they know you're with the St. Paul?
I think it depends. Some people come to college and they're looking for a group. They're looking for the campus ministry. They're looking for the church. Most people, though, we meet around campus at events either that we are running. So we might throw a cornhole tournament at the beginning of the year and invite everyone on the green to come and join us, and then just get people's numbers and then grab lunch with them later and try and connect them to the community. Or maybe we'll just meet someone in the cafeteria and sit down with them and have a conversation, and then continue up to build that relationship. And like what Ed was saying, building the relationship, it's really built on trust, you know, like building a relationship of trust with these young students. So it depends on the student.
Sure. We want to recognize that evangelization, to proclaim the good news, really is a process. It's not just a one-time event necessarily. And so we think about what Michela was beginning to describe. We think of our process really encompassing 4 different stages, what we call reach, call, form, send. So Michela described really well reach. But we do want to go to where the students are living. We don't want to just wait for the ones who are going to come to us, because then we would have very few students. And you know, we have some of our missionaries on campus, for example, living in the dorms, living in the residence halls amongst the students. They're right there with them, just as a way to encounter them, to meet them, to not wait for them to come to us, but to go to the students.
So it's like having almost an open door on that dorm. You know, somebody, you want to talk to somebody, I'm available, you know, and...
Exactly, and to build a genuine friendship with them, to not just, you know, run your event, but to actually get to know the students, to have a lunch with them, to play sports with them is a big one, to work out with them in the gym, you know. And then in the context of those relationships, in the context of that friendship, we want to call them to Christ, to the fullness of the church, to conversion. I talk to a lot of people, and they'll tell me, you have to tell those young people, you have to form them, you need to, you know, tell them this and that. And that's true, but we found that faith needs to come alive first. They need to have an experience of Christ and grace operating in their life. They need to have, as Pope Francis has been speaking about so beautifully, they need to have an encounter with Christ. And this is what we talk about. And we run a retreat called Fan into Flame Retreat, which is really an opportunity for the young people to choose Jesus as Lord of their life through the power of the Holy Spirit.
What do you call that retreat?
Fan into Flame.
Oh, fan into flame.
Fan into flame, the gift of the Holy Spirit has been given to you. Yeah. So we want to pray that the grace that's been given to them can become operative in their life.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
No.
Bishop Sheen, he often, in his talks, he'll tell about people like a parent who will come to him and say, well, my son, he's rebellious. He doesn't want to do what I say. He doesn't pray. He doesn't go to church. And, how can I help him? And he said, in one of his talks, he said, if I told the parent, get him to pray, he said, prayer is not going to do that young man any good because he's wrapped up in himself, like we said at the beginning. Me, myself, and I, that's my world.
Yeah.
He said, get him to do something for somebody else. So the young man went down to Mexico. And about 4 months later, he comes back. He's going to Mass every day, saying his prayers, the rosary and everything. And he had started working with poor children in that parish. And he got his mind off himself. That's the first thing that so many of our young people need to understand. If you're going to become happy, you got to get your mind off yourself and your heart, so your heart can go out. That's where you are refreshed. That's where you're there to help them.
Help them do that.
Definitely.
That's right.
And I think of our household program. I know you lived in household. I'm going to say something about that.
Yeah,
What is? Explain it a little bit.
The household
household,
program? Yeah, so our household program is where a group of students, and usually a missionary, so our women live together and then the men live together in a separate house, and they have life together. They share meals together. They pray together daily. And that's really important, like that common life. But I think what is so formative about household is just the times in everyday life where you're learning to reconcile a relationship because someone may have hurt your feelings doing something, or learning patience with a sister. Just like showing charity in everyday life, kind of like you were talking about in your own community life. Like that's where we're really formed and purified. And so household program is great. I lived in household as a student and as a missionary, and the Lord works in the everyday, in the mundane, and in the very ordinary ways when you're living intentionally with a group of women that all want the same thing, want to grow in their relationship with the Lord and with one another. So it's a really awesome program.
Sure. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Yes, it has a parallel, of course, in religious life. Same thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it isn't easy learning to live with other people because you do have to sort of die a little bit to your own.
Definitely.
I mean, otherwise you'll get caught up in being angry at their whatever they say or do.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to learn, and you're willing to be open, and see, remember I said before, grace builds on nature. That ability to be open to the love of a friend, someone else, opens you up to being able to accept God's love for you.
Yeah.
I remember someone once said that if you can't love yourself, or you can't find something lovable, and that's communicated to you by others, you're lovable. That's just why I spend time with you. You're important. You may never have been told that. You may never have heard that, but it's important for you to know that. Because then God is going to tell you, I love you too.
That's right. God's love is incarnate through each other and through relationships.
That's right.
And like you said, in households, when you're living for yourself, it quickly becomes very apparent, and household life becomes very difficult. Because with the guys, I know we've got more guys usually in our households. We have 10 or 11 or maybe even 12 guys this year in one of our houses in New Jersey living together. And when you think life revolves around you and you're living with 10 other guys, you quickly realize it doesn't. But it's a great lesson to learn, because guess what? In life, it doesn't revolve around you either.
That's right. We need that. It's the diamond. That's what I couldn't remember the stone. Diamonds are in the rough, huh? Yeah. And God, you rub one diamond against another, and that's how both diamonds become beautiful.
That's right.
So it is a difficult thing in many ways, but it's very fulfilling. Especially to somebody who has only known loneliness, rejection, or nobody ever told me I did anything right. it's important, to be loved, even forgiveness. Forgiveness. It's so important.
That's right. I know we had a story. We opened up a men's house at Rutgers University in New Brunswick this year, and I know that there was an experience of one young man last year who just went through life and was struggling throughout the year and went through some real challenges. And unbeknownst to him, during those times of challenges, the other men in the house were praying for him. And at the end of the year, the men had a closing dinner together, and they gave this one young man that they were living with kind of a spiritual bouquet. And they said, we've prayed, 15 rosaries for you. We took 12, cold showers for you throughout the year. We've done this. And the man was just flabbergasted, and he broke down and started weeping because he just experienced, during these times of real challenges, my brothers were there praying for me. And they were just in the trenches with him, going through it. And then that's formation right there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that communicates an aspect, isn't it, of God's love for you.
Yeah.
If my brother and sister can love me that much, yes, God can love me even more than that.
That's right.
And then they want to begin to show that. Yeah. So you've talked about that personal encounter, community, formative, and just living together.
That's right.
Very formative.
That's right. And then the last pillar is really what we call send, that we need to be on mission, right? That a disciple isn't fully a disciple until he's a disciple maker. And so as much as we talk about we want to build a community, we want to build a community that's on mission. And we want to build a community with close and real relationships, but that's always looking outside of itself and inviting others into that and going out. So we want to send them, and we've got students, you'll meet one of them later, who are missionaries with us, but they're missionaries not to Africa or other countries, but they consider themselves missionaries to their college peers. And then we want to form our people in such a way that they can go out to their parishes, into their vocations, into their marriages, into their parishes, and really see their role and their vocation as always being on mission. And this call to evangelize isn't limited to the college years.
It's kind of reminds me of a theme that Pope Francis often goes back to. Didn't he say our call to being a missionary is rooted in our baptism? Go proclaim the gospel to all peoples, and by word and deed. And sometimes it's our, again, the kindness we show, the concern we have for one another that transforms people.
Definitely.
So, that's a wonderful apostolate, and I know you've had some very good success there, with your alumni and serving the church.
That's right. We've, first of all, I think we have up to over 150 now priests and religious from SPO and from Formation.
Send some to the Franciscan.
I think we've already sent 3, actually.
That's right. Yeah,
Brother John Paul.
John Paul and Brother Simon.
And Brother Simon. Right. That's right. Both were formed partially. In SPO household.
And Sister Francis.
And Sister Francis.
She was SPO.
That's
okay,
right.
I'm sorry.
So that's okay.
Some more.
we'll try. So we'll try. But it is wonderful, and we're encouraged by the growth that we've seen in the good fruit with our alumni, who I think we say 98% of them in a recent alumni survey still attend Mass. 27% of them are serving the church in a full-time capacity, doing mission work. Yeah. So we're grateful for that.
That's what we need. And the Holy Father, again, keeps saying to young people, pray to know your vocation, what to do, how you can serve God. This is an answer, huh? This is what God wants. He's blessed your work so very, very much, and I just wanted to continue. I know in the next segment we'll listen to a few of your members, as you said, who have experienced like conversion and who are involved in the work of spreading God's message. We need that. So, I want to thank you both, Ed and Michela, for being on the program here today, because your 2 of your confreres will be filling in for you. Okay, but it's been a pleasure to have you, and we have to make sure that we get your email and all the information of how people can contact you, and perhaps, who knows, maybe a few other colleges you might be moving into, from people who would like to start something. They just know just exactly where to
That's
go.
right.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, don't leave us. We're going to be right back. We're going to hear from two of these missionaries of St. Paul Outreach and their experiences, sharing their story. And we are always uplifted by hearing so many good things. God is at work in the world today, so don't be afraid. Welcome back to Sunday Night Prime. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, your host for today's program, which is entitled Catholic Faith Alive on Campus. A great thing to hear, huh? And we have heard from members of St. Paul's Outreach. We heard the first two parts of the program. Our guests were Ed, Moccia, and also we had Michela Brooks. And they shared, about the St. Paul Outreach and so much of their own experience too. Now we have two students, one former student and one student presently, who are also active members of St. Paul's Outreach, and they're going to tell their story. So I'd like to introduce them because we haven't met them yet. And the first one is Jason Duziak.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you,
Jason,
Father.
welcome.
Thank you, Father.
And we also have Alicia McGeegad.
McGeegad, yes.
McGeegad. Did I get that right?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay. A little bit of a tongue twister there. But Lisa, welcome. Welcome
you
to
for
the
having
program.
us.
Okay. Pleasure to have you both. And I had heard you the other night, I think, did I not? At that dinner that they had. Okay. So, Jason, tell just a little quick introduction of yourself, and then you can go back and later on we'll go through your full story, but just so that people get to know who you are.
Okay, great. Well, like you said, my name is Jason Dudziak. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, originally. I went to Ohio State University. I studied fisheries and wildlife management while I was there. And this is my fourth year serving with St. Paul's Outreach at Seton Hall University.
Now you become a fisher of men.
Yeah.
Like St.
I thought they related pretty well, so.
Yeah. Well, St. Peter learned that lesson, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Elisa, how about yourself?
So I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. I'm currently a student missionary with St. Paul's Outreach. I'm studying secondary education, Spanish, and Catholic studies at Seton Hall University. I'm also living in the women's house with SPO.
We'll have to hear about that. We heard a little bit about how community can be very challenging, but we'd like to hear what that's like living in the women's house. Well, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about your story? I think you have a very interesting story.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I like to start from my background to give an idea where I come from. So, like I said, I grew up in Ohio, and I was in a pretty strong Catholic family. I'm the youngest of 7. My mom and dad are great. My mom is she really taught me how to be a servant, and she was very loving, and creative too with the way she loved. Writing notes in our lunch and making us creative sandwiches for lunch during school and all that. And my dad is really hardworking and taught us the value of discipline and all that. So I came from a really strong Catholic family, and I even went all throughout grade school and high school with a Catholic education. And when I was in high school, I went to Trinity High School in Cleveland, and they had an amazing retreat program and just amazing faith program with the teachers and the community that they built there. So in high school and in grade school, my faith was very strong, and I was actually very close to my faith, and I really saw the value in it. Now, when I went to college, I was still very strong in the faith, and I was even looking to be active in it by starting a Catholic group my freshman year on campus. And so I started to get the ball rolling on that. But in the process, I was surrounded by so many students who weren't connected to the faith. And it was really one of my first times experiencing this lack of community, lack of faith support or encouragement in my faith, and a lack of accountability too. So within the first couple months of college, everything I believed in, all my morals and my values, they were being tested on the daily. I was actually considered one of the, like old school traditionalists, as my friends would be getting involved with partying and drinking, and I would kind of take a step back from that. They'd consider me old school and traditional. And in that, without the encouragement and support of some faithful people in my life, since I didn't have that in my peers, I started to question it too. And I started to wonder, are these morals and these values, are they real, or are they just rules? So I started to search. I started to ask questions and really test all those. So even though I was, going to Mass every Sunday and getting a little bit of prayer in throughout my day, I was still testing those. So I got involved very quickly in my freshman year with drinking and with drugs and even with immoral relationships. So that it happened that quickly was really unbelievable. And I think a lot of college students can experience the same thing. Now, up until my junior year, I was kind of lost in this experimenting and searching. My sophomore year, I transferred to Ohio State University, and I had a moment at Ohio State where I'd gone really far down the wrong direction. I'd really compromised many of my morals and my values, and I got to this point where I was sitting with a group of friends. We had gone out and we had drank too much, and I was sitting with them, and I started to look at my life and the life that I was living, and I realized, and I really heard the Lord speaking to me that night, and he said to me, look at the man that you are today. Is this where you want to be? And I stopped dead in my tracks. And I can remember it like clear as day to this day. And I sat and I said, no, this is not the man that, I didn't leave home and go to college to do drugs and to drink and to even take advantage of women. I didn't leave home to do that. But I just got so invested and so surrounded by the college culture that it really kind of sucked me in. So if I can be real with you, I actually that night I thought I had gone so far away from my roots and my values that I asked myself that night, like, I'm not good anymore. I don't know if I can be good anymore. I think I've gone too far. I've done too much. And actually that night, being sort of isolated away from everything, I considered taking my life that night, and I actually attempted to. But the Lord really saved me that night and gave me hope and called me out of that and prevented me from doing that. So after that, I realized I need to get back to the faith, and I need to return to that.
You can go down that slippery slope pretty far, huh? And you have to even think of, taking your life. It's almost like I reached a point where there's no hope. I can't turn back. There's always hope. You experienced that in God's mercy. So that's a great thing. Very good. Is there a little bit more to your story then? What happened? How did you get back up?
Yeah, after that I realized, okay, I need to get reconnected with the faith. So I started going to the Newman Center at Ohio State. And while I was there were these missionaries who would go to a prayer night. And I was going to a prayer night once a week.
These are St. Paul outreach missionaries.
St. Paul's outreach missionaries. And they really, they welcomed me in. And they started inviting me to different things. And there was like an authentic relationship there that they wanted to invite me into. So after many attempts of them inviting me to different things, I finally accepted. And once I met them and started to play Frisbee with them and go to their house for dinner, I realized, like, these are some good, solid guys. Like, I think that this is the kind of man that I want to be. So I ended up moving into the men's house my senior year of college, and and through that year of living in the men's house, the accountability, the relationships, the morning prayer, the meals together, over that 1 year, they helped me to find my way again, and they helped me to get on the right track and become the man that I actually wanted to be, but I couldn't become on my own. They helped me become that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, we all need help along the way. You know, sometimes it comes by good example, sometimes by, like we talked about, that outreach, inviting, you know, relational, you know, someone who's really hurting, and you were hurting at that point in your life. Yeah. Did your family have any reaction to the way you were living, or was that a total secret?
Most of it was a total secret. I think they knew a little bit about it, but yeah, I think, you know, we in the scriptures we talk about living in the light and living in the darkness, and I think I was trying to hide a lot of that because I wasn't proud of it, and you know, I knew the whole time that they weren't going to approve of that. But
well, if you had a loving mother who put little notes in your lunchbox, I think she'd have to pick up on that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I do know that through my mother's intercession and her prayers for me, I know that was a big part in my conversion.
Yeah. And now you pray for others too, don't you? Okay. Well, let's hear. You know, Elisa, we want to hear your story too. You know, could you tell us a little bit about how, you know, you journeyed and how you came to be part of St. Paul Outreach?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I grew up in a Catholic family, and my relationship with the Lord was very based on what I could know about Him, the things that I read in textbooks or other spiritual readings. And I was that person in religious education courses who would raise my hand to answer all the questions, and then the teacher would say, "Can anyone else but Elisa answer this question?" So that was my relationship with the Lord. So like I said before, I'm originally from Chicago, so my parents shipped me off to New Jersey, and I'm sure that a fear that many parents have when sending their children away is, who are they going to encounter? And I actually found a pretty decent group of friends. They were all very academically motivated. There was no pressure to drink or party or anything like that. We had very similar values, except when it came to faith. They found out very soon that I was the Catholic in the group, and they felt it necessary to beat me down with questions and criticisms. And it wasn't out of curiosity for the faith or to get answers. It was to make me question my own faith. And it happened on a daily basis, and I started feeling exhausted from constantly having my faith battered, and I couldn't answer the questions that they were asking. So it made me question why I would bother suffering like I was when I didn't fully understand my own beliefs. Luckily, though, I had a friend who is currently living in the men's house, but he noticed that I was struggling, and this is pretty funny, but he said to me, "You know those guys I play Frisbee with on Wednesdays? I think there's a girls section to that." He didn't quite do SPO justice with that, but it was the connection I needed. So he set up a coffee date with me and another one of the SPO missionaries. She and I sat down for coffee. We had a really great conversation, and then she invited me to adoration the following Thursday. And then I met all these people afterward during fellowship. All these people who were curious about my life and wanted to hear how my life was going, but then also how my relationship with the Lord was. So it was those initial invites. It was my friend inviting me to a coffee date with a missionary, and then the missionary bringing me to adoration. And now I'm a part of this beautiful community that cares about me and wants me to live in the light.
God was calling you all the time. You know, I want to point something out, because even earlier in the program, it was mentioned how, you know, you often get criticized if you are the only Catholic or you stand out as a Catholic. You know, these people who make fun of you. You know what? I'm absolutely convinced of this. that the basis for why they criticize you is they're guilty. You, by your example, to love Christ, the way you're trying to live, is a rebuke to the way they're living. And that's why they criticize you. They want to, you said it very well, Elisa, they wanted to break you down, you know? But that's, I think that's an important point for our young people to keep in mind. If you get criticized for loving Christ, you're going to get some good marks from Jesus, that's for sure. But, you know, but I think it's because your light, Jesus said, those whose deeds are genuine and worthy, they love the light. They come to the light so that what they're doing, they can verify what they're doing in the light of Christ. But those who don't do good, they hate the light. And I think that's why you suffer that, you know. But if you can get over that, you know what? They're going to start following you eventually because you broke through their anger. Their conscience is going to hit them at some point, you know.
I think that light really attracts people. And so you said that light is shining in me, but when you have groups of women and groups of men that are filled with that light, it brings all these people in. And like now I have this group of women who build me up. I used to pit myself against women. I used to say that I couldn't be friends with women. My dad told me that I needed to make girlfriends in college so that I would have bridesmaids at my wedding.
Well, that's practical.
But now I have these women who I consider my sisters. And then the men that we have in our community, the men who are light to other men, they make me feel so safe with them. And, you know, on college campuses, when relations between men and women are constantly pit against each other, feeling safe with them is an absolute luxury as a woman.
Yes, yes. You know, there was a saint, he's in one of the Eastern churches, the early Eastern churches. He said, one person with the Holy Spirit has enough light to light up the whole world, he said. That's a powerful thought, isn't it? So your example, both of you, your example to others is lighting the light for a lot of them who lost their way. And, you know, when you have a foundation, thank God for our early foundation in the faith, because some of it just comes back to you, you know. And I remember there was a famous songwriter. He had a group called, it was Dion and the Belmonts, and he had lost his Catholic faith, you know, for about 20 years or more. And he walked into the church where he used to be, and he said it all came back to him. Just walking in the church. Father Glenn in our community would say, it's the bells and the smells that come. You remember benediction, the incense, and you know, and so. But this is wonderful, wonderful work. Now, is there anything you could suggest to young people watching this show? Because we only have a couple of minutes now, so we want to make it quick, you know, to the point if possible.
Well, the one thing that I would suggest is having hope, but also going out and actually looking for community, looking for it.
Good.
Nowadays, as missionaries, we realize people aren't really looking for it on a college campus. So the one benefit that we have as missionaries, we can go out on campus and we can introduce ourselves and build the relationship and meet people. But let me tell you, when a student comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to be in a small group. I want to be involved," that's how I think they can really guard their faith and build their faith up too, being proactive.
They're knocking at the door.
Yeah.
You just got to invite.
Where people knock at the door. Yeah.
You got to invite them in, right?
Yeah.
And how about yourself, Elisa? What would you say?
I would suggest finding community, and it's difficult. It's difficult living this life when you're by yourself. But we're made to live in community. We're made to love each other and have relationships with other people. So to live the fullness of faith on college campuses, you really need those other people who are supporting you through it all.
That's so true, yes. And you know, there's a joy shared. You know, a friend is someone who doubles my joys and divides my sorrows, you know, and that's so much of Christian support and fellowship. we're brothers and sisters in Christ. We've got the Blessed Mother to help us. So, well, we've come to the end of our program. I want to thank both of you for being here, and I encourage you to continue your wonderful work. Jason and Elisa, that I hope that this program will touch many young people and give them hope. That word came out a lot in this program today. You got to have hope, otherwise you give up, So I want to thank you, okay? I have to give a blessing now. Well, you've heard this wonderful, wonderful witness. God is at work. Don't ever think, that Christ will be outdone, okay? He holds all the trump cards, believe me, and he drops them down when he needs it. And I want to bless all of you in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and ask Our Lady to watch over you always. Well, we come to that part in the program now. We have to make a little appeal. Mother Angelica, she set up this program to be supported by the people who watch it. And I hope that this inspiring program today inspired you to see how important it is that this message gets out. And, we're dealing a lot here with our young people. That's the future. And they face so much. So help support EWTN to keep that message going out. Pray for them, yes, but remember them as you make a little offering between, as mothers used to say, between your electric bill and your telephone bill. Be as generous as you can, and God will bless you. You're supporting the work of evangelization. So God love you.